Hello, and thanks for being here. I'm so happy you could join me. This week's guest is someone I've been chasing for a very long time. You've asked for him repeatedly, so I'm really excited to finally be able to bring you our chat. He's the legendary rock singer-songwriter Noddy Holder, who rose to fame as the lead vocalist and rhythm guitarist for the band Slade, one of the most successful British groups of the 70s. Noddy's known worldwide for his distinctive voice, flamboyant outfits and catchy anthems, many of which he co-wrote. He's a cancer survivor for the last 5 years and remains the epitome of optimism. Happy, effervescent and so very willing to spin a yarn or two.
Hi there.
Hello, Noddy, how are you?
I think I'm doing pretty well for my age, considering the lifestyle I've had as a rock and roller I was on the road for over 30 years. 70 years, actually, I've been performing on stage. I made my first appearance age 7.
You were that interested in being a performer from when you were a little boy?
Yeah. My dad was an amateur singer around the Midlands where I was brought up. We used to have, on a Sunday night, our local club in our local hometown of Walsall. They'd have what was called free and easy. You'd call it karaoke now, but anybody could get up and do any sort of act. And my dad used to get up and sing. And then one Sunday night, out the blue, he called me up on stage because he knew I could sing around the house. I was 7 years old. And the #1 hit record in the charts in 1953 at that time was the song I Believe. I believe for every drop of rain that falls. But the version was by Frankie Lane, American country and western singer back in the day. It was #1 in the charts in UK. And my dad knew I could sing that song because I'd sang it around the house. I used to hold little concerts in the backyard. We had 3 houses onto our backyard. And I used to charge the local kids an old penny to come and see my puppet show and me sing. So I was an entrepreneur even in those days. And my dad called me up on stage at this free and easy night. And he said, I want you to sing a song. And all the audience was sort of clapping. They hadn't heard me yet. I was a wee little thing. I was very tiny for my age. And I said, well, what can I sing? And he said, do you know I Believe, to the piano player? He says, yeah, of course. And he said, sing I Believe. So I sang I Believe in a sort of soprano-y type voice. And because it was #1 on the chart, and I did sing it well, the audience went berserk at the end. And I took the roof off the place. And of course, I loved it. It was the first taste of applause. And then it was downhill all the way after that. I just wanted to get up every week and sing a song, which I generally did. And then about 1959, 60, I formed my first band at school and started to play working men's clubs, youth clubs, those sort of places with a little amateur band. And they were called the Rockin Phantoms. So I did always want to be an entertainer. I've never had musician on my passport. I've always had artist because I like to do a bit of everything, singing, comedy, acting, adverts, radio. So I have artist on my passport.
Right. Is it true that you used to drive your dad's window cleaning van and pick up Robert Plant and take him to gigs?
Yeah, when in the early to mid 60s, Robert's local band that he was in at the time was a band called Listen. And they never had a van to run to get around their gigs in. They hardly had equipment sometimes. And so when my band, this is before what became Slade, I was in another band before that. When we weren't working and Listen wanted a van, I'd roadie for them. I'd drive my dad's window cleaning van and drive Planty and the rest of the band to whatever gig they got on. So we were quite good pals because we played in the same sort of venues. Robert used to come and see us a lot when we became the Inbetweens and Ambrose Slade before he joined what was the new Yardbirds that then of course became Led Zeppelin. They did a 4-day stint in Earl's Court in London. I think it was about 74, 75 Zeppelin. And he invited me and the band to one of the shows the one night. and we were sitting like up the sides near the stage. I mean, we were huge in Europe at that point. And Robert said, I'd like to do this song for my ex-roadie, Noddy Holder. He's sitting up in the stalls there. And all the crowd cheered. And he said, I'm going to play one of Zeppelin's favourite songs for him now. And they played Kashmir for me, which I love Kashmir.
How did Don Powell convince you to join the group in 1966?
Yeah.
It was called the Inbetweens at the time, wasn't it? And then tell me the story, how you got to join him in this foray.
Well, I was in a couple of bands before that. I was in the Rockin Phantoms, who morphed into a band called the Memphis Cut-Outs then. And then a local name who was on TV was a guy called Steve Brett. He had a weekly TV show on the local TV station in the Midlands. And he saw us play one night. He asked us to be his new backing band. We became then Steve Brett and the new Mavericks. And I knew Don from playing all the venues around the Midlands.
Right.
And he used to come and see my band play quite regular. And his best pal was a guy called Graham Swinnerton. Then we were both bands, me with the Mavericks, them as the Inbetweens, the early Inbetweens. We were both going out to do a stint in Germany. And on the ferry over, we got to talking, having a drink together. And Don and Dave said, we're thinking of splitting up the band when we get back. And Don, of course, knew that I could pretty much sing any type of material. And they said, we'd love you to join the new lineup. So I said to Don and Dave, well, no, I'm happy doing what I'm doing. I'm earning a decent living. And they said, okay, fair enough. So they went off and did their thing, and they did split up when they came back from Germany. And of course, we were the sort of band, the Mavericks, where we could do any sort of material. Steve Brett was doing like Elvis and Jim Reeves, George Jones country material. But us, his backing band, we used to do half the set ourselves. And we'd be doing R&B material plus rock and roll. The GIs loved us as a band. And what they'd do, if we'd play a request for them, they'd buy us a bottle of beer, a whiskey chaser. But you couldn't drink it on stage. You could drink the beer, you could just have a sip of the beer, but you weren't allowed to drink on the stage. So they'd set it all up, the waiters, on a table at the side of the stage. And we'd have to polish off the beer and the chasers in our 15-minute break. Otherwise, the waiters would come and clear the booze and go and sell it in the club and pocket the money. So we learned how to drink very, very well in Germany. But when I came back, I had a bit of an argument over money with Steve Brett. I was doing as much work singing as he was, and we had a bit of a row. So I left the band, and just out as an accident, I was walking up in Wolverhampton High Street, and I bumped into Dave and Don. And they said, well, we still love you to join us. By that time, they'd already auditioned for a new bass player. They'd found Jim Lee, who'd just left school. It was a good idea what David wanted to do as a band. He wanted to have 3 lead guitar players, 2 leads and a bass that would make it all 3 people playing the same riffs and everything. It was something different. And I said, yeah, well, I wouldn't mind giving it a try then, see whether it works. Right from the off, the first song we played, we sort of niched together and it sounded great. And so I joined them. That was it.
It was called Ambrose Slade, wasn't it? Eventually became Slade. When did that happen?
Well, we were Inbetweens for 2 or 3 years. Then we went to London. We had an audition with a record company and they gave us an album deal. But he didn't like the name, the Inbetweens. So he named us Ambrose Slade. But then we needed a London agent and a London manager. An agent came along to listen to us in the studio and he brought with him Chas Chandler, who was the bass player in the Animals, and he'd also been the man who discovered, managed and produced Jimi Hendrix. And Jimmy had gone back to America. Chas was looking for a band. He liked us. He liked what he heard in the studio. But he wanted to see us live. We were a really good live band. We were a loud band even in those days. And Chas put us in this little club in London. It wasn't a rock venue at all. And we went down there and he just wanted to come along and see how we got on playing. he come down the stairs and we were halfway through our first set. And half the audience were on stage with us, dancing round us and joining in with us. And Chas couldn't believe this. He signed us as manager the next day. He said, I want a manager. He said, you're a breath of fresh air to everything that's going around. And that's how it went. Took us another probably nearly 2 years before we got a hit record. But he didn't like the name Ambrose Slade. Let's make it simple. Knock off the Ambrose, he will call you Slade.
Were you already writing songs yourself at that time?
Very few. We were doing covers mostly at that point. We did start writing at Chaz's insistence. We had one album out under the name Ambrose Slade, which was Beginnings. Then the next album, Play It Loud, was the first one Chaz produced. We had a lot of the compositions on that one. After we had our first hit in 71, we Get Down and Get With It. It's a bit of a long, hard slog. We were still building up this massive following live. But then suddenly Chaz said, why don't we put out the song that you finish the act with? And it always goes a storm. Try and get it down as a record, which was a song called Get Down and Get With It. It was a cover of a Little Richard song. Little Richard was my favourite artist. So we managed to get it down in the studio, got a good feel on it, and the radio started to pick up on it. It climbed the charts very, very, very slowly. But eventually we got on top of the pops with it. And because visually we were a great band visually, we just stormed it on top of the pops. And the next day, everybody in the pubs and everywhere were talking about us. It broke the charts.
Slade were off and running, and they rightly thought all their Christmases had come at once. As their success grew, the band members started to grow their hair long to look like the rock stars they were quickly becoming. Manager Chaz Chandler then insisted they begin to write their own hit songs.
He pointed at me, he said, Noddy and Jim, you two have got to go away and write a hit single. And we went, well, how do you do that? How do you write a hit single? And he said, I want you to come back to me in a week or two with a hit song. And we went, oh, blimey, what are we going to do here? Anyway, we sat down and went in the dressing room before we used to go on stage. We used to tune the electric violin and we used to play a little ditty that was sort of in the style of Django Reinhardt and Stefan Grappelli. So we started to jam this tune and I started to sing over the top. Very simple. I won't laugh at you when you boo-hoo-hoo because I love you. Didn't think we were going to stick with those lyrics, but it just worked. And in 20 minutes, we'd got a complete song. I couldn't believe it. It's catchy, but is it a hit song? We went to Chaz with it because he demanded. We went to him and we played it him. And Chaz said, wonderful. He says, we're going to record it. He said, I don't only think you've written your first hit. He said, I think you've written your first number one. And we went in the studio and we cut it within a day. Sounded really good. And we said, but it don't sound like Slade. It's not got that effect that Slade, right on the aftermath of Get Down and Get With It, which was real rowdy, raucous record. And we said, well, let's put the same things, the ideas on this as we did on Get Down and Get With It. So we went in the corridors at the recording studio and did put on boot stamping, hand clapping, and the track sort of came alive. We Sladified it. Within 2 weeks, it was number one on the charts. Actually stormed it on top of the pops. Everybody's raving. And it went to number one and stayed there for 4 weeks. You know, we were on. It opened the way for us. And just after Because I Love You, we brought out a live album, Slade Alive, which then did break us worldwide. It became a phenomenally successful album for us. We did 13 months on the charts in UK with that album. And in Australia, it was bigger than the Sgt. Pepper.
Yeah, Noddy Holder, I remember that album so well. Everybody had to have a copy of that.
And it was amazing, really, because we recorded that album over 3 nights in a little studio theatre in the middle of London. And the audience was only about, probably 300 or 400 people in the audience. And we were on such a high because I Love You was riding high. and did the recording on the Wednesday night, which became the hit album. That really did break us worldwide. But the whole 3 nights and mixing it cost us £400.
Did you have a favourite song on that album?
Well, I do have a soft spot for Darling Be Home Soon. It was a John Sebastian song. One of the reasons why, because in the middle of the song, we go back to a quiet bit again. And I did a burp. We'd been drinking a lot of beer at the top of the pot, that before we went on stage. So I had to get wind up, let's put it that way. And they kept it on. It could have been erased, obviously, off the track. It became very much a focal point of the song. And if I didn't do a burp every time we performed it for years after, I had to do a burp, or the audience went mad and did it for me.
Absolutely, and you do it so well. That's definitely my favourite track on that album too. That was the classic Slade album, wasn't it? You did go on to have so many more hits after that. In fact, in total, you had 21 hit singles, 15 albums with your original lineup. You became really well known for that Christmas song that you wrote. Every Christmas that's played.
Well, it's 50 years old. It's got a life of its own. Everybody in Europe knows that song. Me and Jimmy wrote it. It was based originally on a song that I'd written in 1967. What happened earlier that year, Jim's mother-in-law, the previous Christmas, had said to him, why don't you ever come up with a song like White Christmas, like Bing Crosby did, so it can get played every year? And Jim poo-pooed the idea and then thought, I'm going to take up this challenge that she set me. And he remembered this song that I'd written. It was a song in the hippy-dippy psychedelia days called Buy Me a Rocking Chair to Watch the World Go By. And the chorus went, so won't you buy me a rocking chair to watch the world go by? Buy me a looking glass to look me in the eye. I played it to the band and they went rubbish. So I threw it in the bin. But I'm never one to get rid of stuff. I suppose it was corny, but Jim remembered it. So it must have been a bit catchy. And he got a verse that he hadn't got a chorus for. And he put it together with this old song of mine. So on the night, I went to the pub, had a few drinks, went back to my mum and dad's and wrote the whole lyrics in one go. I wanted to make it What Happens at Christmas. I was having a think. I'm talking that period, 1973. And the economic situation in UK at that time was miners' strikes. Electricians were going on strike, so TV was off at 10 o'clock at night. Dustmen were on strike. Bakers were on strike. Grave diggers were on strike. Country was in total turmoil. The only light at the end of the tunnel was Christmas was coming. You know, one of the lines I came up with was, look to the future now, it's only just begun, because it couldn't get any worse. Much applies today. I think that's why it's still going strong today. It's the fastest selling single up to 1973 of any record in the UK. And it's charted many, many times over the last 50 years again. And we were top of the tree at the time. We'd already had 5 number ones up to that point. 2 that year going straight in at number 1 first day of release, which was Come On Feel the Noise and Squeeze Me, Please Me. Wow. So the record company were on our back to bring out a record at Christmas. Not necessarily a Christmas song. They wanted a release at Christmas. Unluckily for us, 5 days after the last show, Don Powell, our drummer, was in a car crash. It was a fatal car crash where his girlfriend was killed. Don was thrown through the windscreen and he was given 24 hours to live, which you could imagine. We were right at the top of the tree, at the pinnacle of our career. And overnight we were bang, rock bottom, because we didn't know whether he was going to survive or not. He was in intensive care for probably 6 weeks and he survived. And the doctors said to him, you either get on the drums now and see if you can still play. If you don't do it now, you never will get on the drums again. So we decided to take him to America and see if he could still play the drums. So he wasn't under the spotlight in Europe. He couldn't taste or smell. He had no memory. He couldn't remember any of the songs, any of the hits, where he lived, his hometown. He could remember nothing, nothing at all. And so we took him to the States and we went booked a recording studio. And the only song we'd written to record was Merry Xmas Everybody. So we decided to try and put that down because it wouldn't have been too difficult for him to play. Anyway, of course, he couldn't remember the song from start to finish. So what we had to do, we had to record it all in little bits. I couldn't sing to a basic track because there was no basic track to sing to. We did not have high hopes that it had worked. We went off on tour then to sort of break Don in and see if he could handle playing live for a couple hours a night. And of course, Don couldn't remember the stage numbers. While I'm talking to the audience, Jim would be whispering in his ear the intro to the next song. And that's how we had to work for the next 2 or 3 years. We had to work that way.
You had discovered what an awesome songwriter you were. It came quite easily for you.
Oh, no, it wasn't easy. You did struggle to come up with follow-ups all the time. Jim used to panic about it all the time. He was mainly the melody man. I have that rock and roll approach, me. I'm like, what will be, and the next song will come, by hook or by crook. Yeah, but the pressure on us at that time, we had to come up with at least 3 singles a year, at least, while we were touring constantly as well.
That's huge pressure.
Record companies were making a lot of money from us.
You're only ever as good as your last single, aren't you?
You are. That's very right. You are correct. And the pressure on us was phenomenal. But we prided ourselves as a live band as much as anything else. We knew we made good records, great records, but our forte was live. Everybody who ever saw us never went away unhappy. Even when we came to Australia the first time.
I remember it well.
Great. In those days, it was a 28-hour flight from UK to Australia. And of course, on our first tour there, we didn't realise what success we'd had there before we got there. We knew we'd done well, but we didn't know how well. And of course, we were doing all the race courses in all the big cities. And we'd been drinking, all these 4 English bands, well, us and Crow and Lindisfarne, had been drinking on the plane for 28 hours. And we got off the plane in Sydney. And what greeted us, the media there, with a barrel load of Fosters, expecting us to jump in and start drinking the Fosters as soon as we arrived, which we did, of course. We had such a great tour. And we didn't realise Slade Alive had been #1 for 6 months. It was knocked off the #1 spot by our next album, which was Slade. And we had 3 singles in the charts all at the same time.
You were really riding the crest of a wave at the time. Your egos must have been exploding.
Well, not slightly.
Slade was dominating the charts, often outperforming artists like Sweet, T-Rex, Susie Quattro, Roxy Music and David Bowie. Quite simply put, they were on fire.
I'm Noddy Holder. You're listening to A Breath of Fresh Air. Yippee!
Slade was so much more than a fun and catchy glam rock band. They proved to be a pioneering and innovative force that paved the way for punk, metal and indie. But as you're about to hear, it wasn't always easy for Noddy Holder to be a rock star. I do recall a very quirky story about you, that you always travelled while on tour with a set of tools. Tell me about that.
Well, this only came to light for the public about 5 years ago, 6 years ago. I did this tour and it was a Q&A show. And this one night we on stage and I used to carry this little like doctor's bag with me. Mark Radcliffe said to me, he said, "What is that bag you carry about with you?" Because he's taking the mickey in case I've got something weird in the bag. "Is it your drugs or something?" I said, "No." I said, "It's my toolkit." And he says, "What do you mean your toolkit?" And I said, "Well, to spend time, I hate going in a hotel and there's things wrong with it. If you're paying a lot of money for a hotel room and there's usually something wrong, the wardrobe door is hanging off or the shower curtain or the rail is coming down there's always something wrong, something's creaking or whatever. And I said, I mend these things while I'm in the room to try and put them right. And he was like amazed. The audience are amazed at this. And Mark Radcliffe said to me, you must only be the only rock and roll star in history. Usually they wreck rooms. You repair rooms and leave them in a better condition than when you checked in. So that was the story of that bag of tools. I mean, I won't say I do it all the time, but if I'm bored, instead of watching the telly or whatever else you used to do in hotel rooms back in the day, I used to get my toolkit out and start repairing the dripping tap.
Now, what were some of the other weird questions you got?
Well, I'll tell you this one. Before the show started, we used to have a big box in the bar where the audience could put questions in the box. And Mark would go through the box and see what were good questions. He landed them on me unexpectedly. And then we'd also have a roving mic to go around the audience. And the first question was, Susie Quattro, did you? And the audience just went in uproar.
And what's the answer?
I'm not telling you the answer. No. Susie's a big pal of mine. We had Susie when she first came over to UK. We took her out as opening act on our tour. We had Thin Lizzy as the second act, and then we finished the show. When we talking 50 years on, she still says, you only gave me 15 minutes at the start of the show. I said, but that's all you knew. You'd only got a new band. You didn't know more than 15 minutes. But she got a good reception. Right on the back of that tour, she got Can the Can. Good. And that started her career off.
Noddy, you've got 2 books out at the moment. The first one, your autobiography, was Who's Crazee Now?
Well, they're quite old now, the books, yeah, but they are. They're still out.
People still may want to pick them up. There's some great stories in there. So the first one came out in 1999, Who's Crazee Now? And the second one in 2014 called The World According to Noddy. Is there a third one in you?
No, there is a third one in me, but it's not due yet. But I haven't quite decided what route I'm going to go for the third one. But the reason I did The World According to Noddy, it was a series of books, actually. And the first one was the publishers had asked Joan Collins to do it. And she did The World According to Joan Collins. And it did very well for the publishers. And they thought the next year they wanted to do someone else doing the same thing. And they thought, who's the other end of the spectrum to Joan Collins? So they thought, Noddy Holder. And it was really my take on modern life, what goes on in the modern world as compared to when I was growing up. But there's one out, actually, that I was given, and it's a book. The guy who's put it together, he's not written, he's put a book together of all fans' recollections of gigs they were at. And the book's called Wild, Wild, Wild. It's great to read what certain fans thought about you, and it's very interesting.
On this one, you're getting a whole different perspective.
On this one, I'm getting a whole new perspective on what did touch my heart, actually. One fan, and this guy wrote, he came to see us in the later days of the band before I left in the early 90s. And he'd come to one of the last shows that we'd done. And he was saying we're still as good as ever. And he gave us a fabulous review. And he said the thing that touched him now, it just reminds him of his mates when they were growing up and they were at school together. And they used to listen to the chart every Tuesday lunchtime to see where our record was in the charts. And then they'd maybe save all their money to buy the new record. And the sacrifices they made between them, a gang of chaps, all girls included, to actually go out and buy your record, go out and see a gig. And he said, all those guys now are dying. And it just makes him cry when one of our records comes on, because he remembers his mates then. It brings back to him the camaraderie of his mates. And that's far more important to me than how many records a certain record sold. That's what we were all about. Us and the audience were as one. It was our thing. It was Slade's thing. It just brings it home to you how important a part you were of people's lives, especially how gigantic we were at the time. And reading this book, it does bring it all back to me, because we were in a bubble, don't forget. We couldn't, me and Dave particularly, we couldn't go out to the cinema. We couldn't go out to shops or anything like that in those days. We were just too big. It was impossible to live a normal life. And when we were touring the world, we were in this bubble. And we didn't know really what was going on in the outside world. We knew our records were going to #1. We knew we were selling out gigs, but we didn't know to what extent and how big we were. I mean, even today, I didn't realise it, but we're told by statistics, we were the biggest selling UK singles band in the whole of the 70s. We sold more records than anybody else in the 70s. And I'm including Bowie, Mark Bolan, and everybody else that was around. So it's incredible, these facts that come back to you.
There were a lot of compromises, it sounds like, that you had to make in your own personal life because of all this fame, weren't there?
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you ever regret it?
I don't look back on stuff like that. We worked ourselves to death, really. I mean, me in particular, because I was out there not only doing the gigs and recording and all the rest of it and writing, but I was always the main one that went out and did the promotion. Went round all the radio stations, you know, when the new album or a new single was out, doing all the press interviews. It was mainly me. And of course, I didn't see my 2 elder kids that are in their 40s now, my 2 daughters. I didn't see them growing up at all. I didn't see their first nativity play. I didn't see their school concerts. I didn't see none of the normal things you do as a parent to see your kids. Of course, I saw them when I was at home, and we had a great time, but it couldn't have been nice for them either that I was away all the time. But it did, in the mid-80s, it did wreck my first marriage, because the lifestyle I was leading, I'd been married 10 years, and my lifestyle wasn't changing. I was still out on the road, touring all around the world. And she just got fed up with it, and we just drifted apart. And so that was a shame for the kids, really. So there was that part that you do have to sacrifice when you're in a rock and roll band. On the other side, I mean, you got somebody like Jim and Dave in the band. Both their marriages survived. They're both married to the same person they were married to way back in the early 70s. When we came back from America in 1977, the whole landscape in the UK had changed. The punk thing had come in. Punk and disco were the big things. And we were considering boring old farts. And we had a couple of years in the doldrums. But while we were in the doldrums, we were still gigging constantly, selling out places and playing fabulously well. And we used to get all the punks and what would soon become the new metal bands or the new romantic bands. They were all coming to see us. They were all fans. And they used to come and see us. We were the pioneers in that sort of way. We only know so because bands that became famous in the wake of us tell us so. They tell us we were a big influence on them. When we went back to LA in the 80s, all the new glam metal bands in LA all came up and told me that we were the band that set them on the trail of what became the new glam metal era in Los Angeles. Quiet Riot, one of those bands, went to #1 with Come On Feel the Noise out there. So the proof was in the pudding.
Noddy, do you still sing today?
In fact, funnily, after my illness, I've been doing a few gigs with a 10-piece boogie-woogie jazz band, who are a really great band. They're all under 30. They're all great jazz players. They're absolutely fabulous musicians. They haven't got a clue what I'm talking about half the time, but they love playing with me. And they love my stories. I tell stories on the stage, and we just have fun. And there's no pressure on me because I don't do many. What I like about it is I only have to turn up. I don't have to do sound checks or anything. I just walk on the stage, test my mic in the afternoons working, and then I'm free to do what I want.
Yeah.
And I just go on and take the accolades.
Yeah.
But I never thought I'd be doing this again 5 years ago. I just thought, well, this is a bonus. I'm still alive. I might as well go out and have a bit of fun on stage again.
What an incredible force you are, Noddy Holder. The world loves you, and we are so glad.
You are a sweet talker. You really are.
I
love having my ego, but I love all that.
It's true, though, and you know it. And we thank you for the music and for your fabulous attitude towards life.
Thank you very much. I've enjoyed it. It's been good. Keep on rocking!
The inimitable Noddy Holder, who'd been diagnosed with esophageal cancer in 2018 and given 6 months to live. Thankfully, he recovered due to experimental chemotherapy. I'm very glad he's still with us. I'm sure you feel the same. Thanks for your company for this episode. If you'd like to check out some of the other people I've had the pleasure of chatting to, just scroll through A Breath of Fresh Air. I'm sure you'll find plenty to enjoy. Bye now.